Good morning, good morning. I hope you are having a beautiful start to your Monday, or if it is indeed for you, Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Happy Sunday, happy weekend. Let us know in the comments how things were. How was your weekend? Did you get some relaxation in? Was it good? Did you charge up? Are you coming into this week with some motivation, some discipline? Are we ready to go on another big week? Now, if you do watch this on replay, team, please do hashtag replay. Let us know that you've been in here, that you've got value. It really helps for me to kind of track on who's getting value from the podcast. And of course, I'm coming out strong with a big podcast episode today. So I'm promising you guys a simple message, but a deep value podcast. We're going to go deep on this one, guys. I think it's going to be very, very helpful. And if you take the takeaway and implement on this podcast, you're going to get some real benefit from it. All right. So, my friends, I want you to know that I value your company in here this morning. It's always great, obviously, getting live people coming in. And I always just think that when you have the live connection, it's so much better than listening on replay. So well done to all of you coming in. Good morning, Coach Ez. Hello, Kenny and Hazel. I hope you're well. Hello. I haven't put the Restream link up. That's all good. Hello, Chris. How are you, mate? Lovely to have your company here this morning, champion. We've got all the OGs, don't we? Xanth is in here. Good morning, Xanth. I hope you had a good weekend. Hello, Ash. How are you? Tez is in here. Tez, mate, they're beating you in here these days. Good morning, Nikki, friend, my champion, Mikey Bergman. Look at all these squad gods coming in to get some. Love it. Hello, Joe. Lovely to catch up. By the way, Joe, the night out for the UK girls looked like it was awesome. so good. Leslie says she's trying to watch. I don't know. You're watching, Les. I don't know why you're trying. Morning, guys. How's everyone? We're starting in 2 minutes. Team. Tez is tagging everyone. It's so good. I'm going to bring Instagram on at the moment. Of course, Cordia has stolen my phone today because her one's broken down, so I can't be live on all my platforms. Hello, Michael. How are you, mate? And JC Niles is in here. I reckon we are ready to get started and rocking rolling. So let's switch over to the podcast stream, and we are good to rock and roll. Hey, guys, let's get stuck into it. On the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. I love having you guys coming in live. So if you are a supporter of the podcast and you've been listening to what is nearly 200 episodes, I think we're up to about 196 episodes so far. I'm super pumped to make the way to that 200, and we'll make sure that episode 200 is a good one. Maybe bring on a guest or one of our clients or something of the like. Okay, so if you're not in Better Body Academy, here's what I've got for you right now, okay? On Monday, the 1st of May, we are starting a challenge. We have not done a challenge in over a year. We've doubled the length of the challenge. So we've gone from 14 to 28 days. This 28-day challenge is going to be an insight of what it's like to be in our Better Body Academy main program. You're going to get A-grade coaching. So if you haven't got the email or you're not aware of the challenge happening, it starts the 1st of May. It obviously goes to the 28th of May. And the best way to get signed up for the challenge is to shoot me a DM if you don't already have the application link, and I'll send you the details over. Now, to our clients, I love you guys. We've had so many DMs from our clients, haven't we, Coach Mike, Coach Ez, Coach Carly, asking, can I be part of the challenge? And that says to me that our clients like the idea of doing short-term pushes. So, clients, just so you know, this is not for you. However, responding to your question, what we are going to do is a 4-week sprint starting on May 1st to align the challenge, or rather have the challenge aligned to you. So we'll go into a bit more details, but it's going to be very, very simple, of which we go back to basics for the month of May, okay? What I want you to do this week in preparation for the challenge, okay? Because I think the thing about focus, right? We want to have focus for a short period of time. What I want you to do is don't fall off the horse this week. Be very visible, but I want you to almost take it like a focal download, what do you call it? Deload, like a mental deload, okay? What I mean by this is, starting on May, we are going to go hard, okay? And when I say hard, we're going to go hard for remember we did the 6-week sprint at the end of last year? We're going to do a 4-week sprint for May, okay? So I want you coming out on May 1st, like our challenge clients, ready to rock and roll. So if this week you feel it's a good idea and your kind of energy level's been, a bit off, taper it back a little bit and set your sights on Monday to go bang. Does that make sense? Guys, let's get on with the podcast. Now, I will stick around for the end of this podcast, and what I do want you to do is put your takeaways on my personal profile wall, because this is a challenging podcast to run, okay? It's one of those podcasts which is going to, if it delivers well for you guys, it's going to hit. Now, this is going to require you as the listener to be objective and take a somewhat egoless view. I want you to hear out my full argument to this podcast and then make a judgment at the end of that on what you think going forward. Does that sound fair? We're going to be talking about the hard part of weight loss. And for that matter, transforming your life in any way. We're going to unpack this idea that I'm always talking about, how although weight loss science is simple, losing weight is hard. Yet I think when I say hard, many of us translate that as impossible. So we have a list of excuses that we've attached to that it's impossible for us to see any possibility but that being the truth, okay? We think these excuses are so unique to us, and that in our situation, it's just so rare, the situation that I'm in, that no one else suffers it. You guys know how many times a week I hear, Jace, mate, I've just got no time. I hear this so often that it's more common than it is rare, okay? So let's get out a list of perhaps the main reasons given as to why someone can't lose weight. Okay, let's just kind of knock them out so we're setting the tone here. Number one is lack of time. Many people blame, their busy schedules for not having time and exercise to prepare healthy meals. Okay. 2, genetics. Some people believe that their genetics are responsible for their weight and there's nothing that they can actually do about it. Number 3, slow metabolism. We believe that we have a slow metabolism, therefore I can't lose weight. Maybe it's our age for the same reason. Medical conditions. I have hypothyroidism, or I have PCOS, for example. That's the reason I can't lose weight. Maybe it's emotional eating. Maybe I just constantly turn to, food as a stress or anxiety management tool, and that's challenging for me, okay? Or maybe it's just far out lack of motivation. Now, when we think about those list of kind of excuses, reasons, justifications, whatever we want to talk about, there are some things that are objectively true, okay? What I mean by objectively true is that, for example, if you have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or if you have hypothyroidism, in other words, an underactive thyroid, these impact your metabolic rate, okay? So factually, it makes it difficult to lose weight, harder to lose weight. Not impossible, but harder. That's factually correct. Others in that list, like, time and money and motivation, these are all about the behaviors of the person. Whatever the case, I want to give you a statement, okay? I want to give you a statement which I want to be the takeaway of this episode. Here it is. While not everything is your fault, everything is your responsibility. I'll say it again. While not everything is your fault, everything is your responsibility. If you take this message here and abide by it, you're going to see incredible changes immediately. So let me clarify the difference between fault and responsibility with some examples, because I think, if you just look up dictionary definition, they're really hard to separate. So example 1, I'm a student that has a paper that's due tomorrow, and my dog Ralph decides to jump up on my table and eat my paper, and I don't have a backup copy. Clearly, that is Ralph's fault. And so I whack him and curse him and maybe stick him outside in the cold. But that doesn't change the fact that my paper is due in the morning. It becomes my responsibility to solve it. So I take personal power. I stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning to get the paper done so that I can submit it. This is the difference between it being the dog's fault and my responsibility. I'll give you another example. You're a woman with PCOS that has packed on the weight despite the fact that you've lived a pretty healthy lifestyle forever. It's not your fault that you got PCOS. We don't exactly know what causes PCOS, but what we do know is that there could be a genetic link. But regardless of who or what is to blame, the only way you're going to manage that well is if you take responsibility, right? Regardless of blame. And I'll take one more example. I'm a 40-year-old man that has a wife that leaves me for another man. And I become super emotional and I pack on a bunch of weight drinking, as an example. It's not my fault necessarily that she shagged him while I was at work making money for what I thought was my family. But regardless of what she did, it's now my responsibility to collect myself and go get myself back into some form of functional shape. Now, there's two stories. They weren't personal stories. I'm just giving examples to try to show the difference between fault and responsibility. Can you let me know if those examples make sense in the comments, please, guys? Now I want to give you a personal story about two things that happened to me, okay? When I was 30-something, my partner of 6 years and someone that I considered my best friend cheated on me with another guy and had a kid with him. I was working my absolute bollocks off for what I thought was our shared future. I felt that I observed her becoming depressed. She dropped off work, and so I held the fort. She would disappear for a couple of days on end, doing what I thought was, retreating. I didn't leave her. And it took my best mate waking me up with a call to let me know that she had seen her holding hands with another guy for me to finally acknowledge what was going on. And she eventually had a kid with him. Okay? Here's another story. I'd been with the same company for working my bollocks off for nearly a decade, feeling like I was massively underpaid. Doesn't matter how hard I worked. I couldn't understand how my fucking boss could not see the value I brought to this business. And so he didn't respond to my empty threats of leaving unless I got a pay rise. Eventually, COVID hit. What actually happened was I got sacked. Not only did I not get a pay rise, I got sacked just as I found out that my daughter was about to be born. You see, I blamed the world. In both of these circumstances, I felt very much like a victim. I wanted to assign blame on something or someone else, but me, the girlfriend, the boss. And we all do that, right? We assign blame because it feels extremely satisfying, maybe, to know that it's not our fault. There's something about fairness and justice being directed in the right way. And when it's directed away from us on someone else, that makes us feel good. And guess what? If the girlfriend or the business owner shows some form of future remorse, we feel vindicated. But aside from that, how does faulting or blaming externals help? Ask yourself that. The truth is, it doesn't. You see, what actually happens is faulting or blaming things external to you is the ultimate form of disempowerment. And this is where responsibility comes in. After the initial sookage of the cheating experience that I went through, I took the type of personal responsibility that any good man should take, and focused on myself, got myself into tremendous shape, got back in the scene, thrust myself all of a sudden into the Tinder world, and then 6 months later, I met my life partner, Cordia. After the initial sookage of getting sacked, I took responsibility, like any dad should do, who's about to bring a life into the world, doubled down on myself, paid a coach $12,000 and went in on BBA all time. You see, here's the thing. Blaming externals makes you feel really good in the short term, but it helps nothing. It keeps you stuck, waiting for a savior. The problem is, everyone of our friends and family are too busy dealing with their own shit. No one's coming to help. Taking responsibility, regardless of fault, gives us our power back. This has happened. Now I can fix it. Does that make sense? Taking responsibility is an act of strength. It is not an admission of guilt. We're going to talk about why in a moment. Here is the real reason, guys, why taking responsibility is so important. The human experience is full of ups and downs, isn't it? And what is sure as hell is we cannot avoid sickness and death of those close to us. You cannot avoid horribly unfair things that happen in your life. They will continue to happen. And if every time something happens, you fall into a complete sabotaging mess, your own life is going to be one of snakes and ladders, where you're just up and down and up and down. I love the quote, the most fundamental decision a person must make is to decide if they live in a friendly or a hostile universe, because this just completely shapes your way that you interact with the world. And this is the reason why I believe that getting in shape is so important, because it requires you to do the hard things required to get in shape so you can build the confidence and self-esteem to do the harder things and become the beacon of strength to your family when they most need it, when shit that's traumatic does happen. You know, when I knew that Cordia was the life partner for me was when Ocean was born with a 50-50 chance of survival, and she spent her first 2 and a bit weeks in the intensive ward, children's intensive ward. And Cordia and I were absolutely in sync in our approach, unwavering. We're in this together. This is the hand we've been dealt. It's not our fault. Let's take responsibility. Taking responsibility, regardless of fault, builds ultimate strength and puts you in a position of power. You know what's the hardest thing for a coach? Okay, now listen up, guys, because we're going to go deep on this. Trying to be really honest and truthful without a client taking it as us assigning fault or blame. The reaction is often a feeling of, yeah, Jace, but you don't know what my life's like, so you can't judge. To which I am saying, I am not judging you in any form or fashion. And the reason you are feeling judged is because you actually feel guilty for not doing better or taking responsibility. I'm not judging you. I don't know your circumstances. The way out of this feeling of being judged is to understand what coaching actually is. Coaching is a you meet me halfway thing. I will give you the tools, the education, and the direction, but I need you to do the thing. I can't do the work for you. Your results are your responsibility. And let me say straight out, I know what it's like to be the client being overwhelmed and not implementing, okay, to the level that I want. My last coach, I paid $35,000 for 15 months. I signed up just before having my second kid, and I was in the depths of sleep deprivation for the entire time that I was in that program. I wanted to implement everything and get all the results to warrant spending that amount of money, but I simply couldn't. But importantly, I took responsibility for me. I never blamed him or the coaches or the program. I chose to enroll. I owned it. I did what I absolutely could. And then I took the lessons for future experience. I never complained about the cost because it was my decision. Now, let's wind this back to give context for you and your transformation and really simplify this. I want to pick on 3 things. These 3 things are lack of time, lack of money, and your emotions. And we're going to go deep on these, okay? Lack of time. Speaking factually, do you have any more or less time than anyone else in a day? No, of course, it's 24 hours. We know that, right? Are you extremely busy in your work and family life? I'd say absolutely, yes, no doubt. I feel the same. It feels like there is no time, 100%. Do you know other people that are very, very busy but do keep their health in check? Of course, I assume so. Is it possible that you are just uniquely busier than any other person in the world that has the same number of kids, the same type of business hours, the same life situation? Are you just completely unique? Probably not. There probably is other people like me that have a business with 250 clients, 2 kids, and a working wife. So is it possible that by blaming time, making it time's fault, who is external to you, you are trying to escape being responsible for coming up with the solution of getting healthy? Is that possible? Yes. Hey dude, I get it. As I try to scale a business, the time balance is the exact problem that I'm facing. It's the thing that I'm trying to solve right now. This podcast has taken me 4 hours to write on a Sunday and deliver. Is that time well spent? I don't actually know, to be honest. I'm not sure. I guess it depends on how hard it hits. What I do know is that there are people out there the same age as me, with 2 kids, a working wife, many more clients than I do, who are managing. It's my responsibility to figure out what they are doing. It's not time's fault. Does this make sense, guys? If I want what that is, I've got to model it. I've got to find it out. There's no point in me just exonerating myself of responsibility and saying it's time's fault. Let's quickly talk about lack of money. Money buys you time. That's what money does. It doesn't buy you happiness, it buys you time. If you can't afford coaching, as an example, it just may be that your results are a little bit slower than if you had been able to afford coaching, because maybe you'll spin the wheels a bit. But if you make up for time with attitude and you just simply go at it twice as hard, then you can probably make up for the lack of coaching because of the lack of money. If you can't afford organic food, guess what? It doesn't make a shit of difference. In terms of weight management, it doesn't matter. If you can't afford a gym membership, it's not an issue. Walking, body weight training is completely free. If you were born into a poor family, that is not your fault. You didn't choose that. You didn't choose to be born into a poor family. Anyone that's probably listening to this podcast is lucky enough to be born at least in a first world country. But from there, you didn't choose that. But if you're wanting to get out of being poor, then it's your responsibility to solve that. Waiting on the government's not going to help. More often than not, it's a priority thing. I know that people are saying, for example, they don't have money for a membership, and then they're doing bags of cocaine on the weekend. I know people who are rolling around in big fancy cars that they bought on credit in an effort to try to look good in front of their mates, complaining about the cost of food. Fucking please. This is the difference between fault and responsibility. The final one that I'm going to go deep on is your emotions. See you, Kirst. Now, this is probably the hardest one to talk about because I reckon the number one cause of being overweight is emotional eating. Give me a hands up if you would agree with that. We're triggered by something acute or chronic, which keeps us in a state of stress overload, right? Which drives us to eat to escape the feeling of stress and overwhelm and emotion. Like, I get it. If anyone was present for Dr. Ginny's podcast on menopause, you'll hear her say it's the change to our behaviors that causes the weight gain. So I get it. Now let's go deep on this. Chronic trauma can play a huge role in someone's health. And let me say it clearly. If you've been the victim of abuse, as an example, that is never your fault. Never ever your fault. And bringing perpetrators to punishment is absolutely reasonable. But the worst thing that we can possibly do if we're a trauma survivor is put the responsibility of our lives in the hands of the person at fault. As hard as painful as it is, we need to take responsibility so we reclaim the personal power to be able to make the change. Does that make sense? Dropping it back a little bit. Most of us are emotionally eating for far less prominent reasons. Here it is. We feel shit about work or relationships or whatever. We're just drained, we're tired, we're over it, and so we overeat and overindulge to try to escape that feeling. That's as simple as it is. Yeah. We get to the end of the month, we look at our outcomes, we didn't lose the weight that we wanted to that month. Okay? We look at our actions, and because we didn't follow the plan that our coach gave us and lay it out in front of us, we didn't follow it. We don't take responsibility for it because we blame our emotions. And our emotions are not our fault. Of course, we've come full circle. Your emotions are not your fault. But your emotions are yours. They're causing your life results, and therefore they're your responsibility. They're not your fault. They're your responsibility. We're not trying to assign guilt or blame here. We're trying to change our life. Yeah, Jace, my dad just died. What about that? That's not your fault. You being a single mum is not your fault. Hey guys, I'm not judging here. I'm not judging to assign fault, and you should not be assuming guilt for any of this. These emotions are so freaking hard to manage, but they're your emotions, and therefore they're your responsibility. If your emotions are the cause of you overeating, just trying to go cold turkey on the emotions go cold turkey on the not eating is kind of probably not going to work. We've got to address the cause of the emotion. Go back there and ask yourself, what can I do to deal with how I feel? How can I take responsibility over this? But getting to the end and just saying, I didn't lose weight because of my emotions and I can't do anything about it, that's not the approach. Try and remove the cause of the feelings and the emotions. And if you can't do that, then what we need to try to do is work out how do we create better habits to respond to those emotions. In winding up this podcast, guys, I just want to touch on this idea of emotional intelligence. It is beyond the scope of this podcast to try to open up a big discussion because we could talk about emotional intelligence for days. But I suffice to say, in my opinion, this is the single most important determinant of a person's life and happiness, their emotional intelligence. What does that even mean? In a basic sense, it's the ability to recognize and understand and manage our emotions and the impact that they have on our life. That's it. One of the strongest aspects of emotional intelligence is referred to as self-management. Self-management. This is your ability to control impulsive feelings and behaviors, manage your emotions in a healthy way, take initiative, follow through on commitments, and adapt to when your life changes. Self-management. The game of transformation, guys, is a game of emotional intelligence. And being willing to take responsibility, adopt a big picture, long-term approach that's not reactive and doesn't worry about any 1 week or one meal or one food or one workout, and understanding that your excuses are just challenges that you haven't yet solved. I could put my hand up and say, my mission and business is not where I want now because I don't have enough time. But the truth is, I have the same time as you. I'm just trying to solve the challenge of prioritizing the things in my life, including all of the things that we all have to deal with, so that I can progress the area of my life that's holding me back. So it's not that time is a valid excuse. what it is it's my challenge and it's my responsibility to work towards trying to solve that. Now, the takeaway from this podcast is that it's the phrase that we started it off with. Distance yourself from the blame game, okay? If I just blame time, if I just blame my husband, if I just blame the world, you're never, ever, ever, like never going to escape it, because you're putting your hands, your results into the external. The moment that you say, you know what, like this is what I've got to deal with, and you take responsibility for that, you're not saying that I am now responsible for being raped. I am now responsible for the fact that my wife cheated on me. You're not assuming responsibility. You're not assuming blame or fault. You're just taking responsibility so that from this place, you can go and do what you want in the world. So you don't feel like you're the pinball in the pinball machine that's just getting bashed around everywhere. Does this make sense? I'm going to leave it there, guys. We've still got 30 people watching live, so I'm guessing that this is a topic that hits hard. I'm going to stick around for a chat after this podcast. It's been the Better Body Academy podcast. Big topic to start off the week. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. See you at Instagram. Okay, guys. Firstly, what I would absolutely love is there's 30 people still watching here live. So I'm going to assume that this is a triggering topic, or that you completely disagree with me, or that you completely have had a penny drop moment. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I would appreciate so much if you go to my personal profile on Facebook and you put one takeaway. Even if the takeaway is like, Jace, you don't know shit, because I'm open to this possibility, right? I'm open to this possibility. You know, I am lucky in a way, not lucky in a way, I'm lucky in a very big way to be born in Australia to a middle-class family that, you know, I got what I needed to. Like, that is unbelievable. But, you know, I'm not immune to getting shit happen to me. And when I look at the most successful people, and if you don't mind, Ez, I might just briefly talk about your situation. Erin's going through a really difficult time at the moment, but you wouldn't know it because she's not blaming anyone. And it's not anyone's fault, but it's her responsibility. And there is so much fucking power in this. And so I had a great chat to a couple of ladies this morning. And if it is that, like, maybe there's something in the coaching that you're not getting, or maybe a struggle that you're having, right? The first thing you can do to really rein it in is just to go, all right, okay, this is what it is. I'm owning this, right? It's not that you're going to pretend it's not happening. It's not that you're going to, it's just that you're just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to own it. Because the only way that I can do something about it is if I own it. Does this make sense, guys? It's about taking back the power. And there's going to be some people here who perhaps listen to this podcast and say, yeah, Jace, you're coming at this from a man's perspective and you don't have emotions, or like some fucking bollocks, and they've completely not listened to the podcast at all. But the reality is, like, let's put together a picture, and I think Nick is a cracking example of someone like this, of where he was at a point in time, you know, just over a year ago, not in the best of shape, blaming other things, no time, no ability. Something happened here, of which Nick just he just went the absolute other end, and he took responsibility for everything. And then guess what happens as a result of that? Then Xanth, his sister, sees it and goes, huh, I'm taking responsibility of that. And then someone sees Xanth and goes, oh, and this is the way that communities actually just change the world. It's because the responsibility becomes contagious. The problem is that sometimes it requires a very courageous person to stand up and be the responsible one. Okay? I would love Coach Troy, in his own time, to open up about this idea for you guys. Because if there's ever been an example of someone who is like dealt some shit blows, not his fault, but taken responsibility, this bloke is the person. And we've all got these in our history, don't we? And so I almost don't like talking about personal anecdotes because my situation, like this is the fucking life experience. It's called the law of polarity. Everything has two sides to it. Every single thing. And you can't have one side without the other. You can't have life without death. You can't have happiness without sadness. Like everything is the same, but we get attached too much emotionally to the poles. Get attached too much to the poles and it stops us from actually moving forward. And just let's I can't actually see who this is because it's not authorized, but I know I've gone backwards, but I know it's my responsibility. I haven't blamed others. Yeah. And so you're not going to be like I'm over the course of the last year, I'll tell you some honest truths. It feels for me, it's literally been 2 steps backwards, 2 steps backwards, 2 steps forwards. That's what it feels like. I'm working my fucking ring out, but it's 2 steps backwards, 2 steps forwards. I solve one thing, another thing pops up. I solve one thing. You sit there and you just go, oh man, like what? But like, whether those things are my fault or not, if I just sit there and sulking about, oh, this situation is so, it's just stopping, like just pure practically stopping me from doing anything. And so the reason I'm doing this podcast, guys, is that coming into May, I would just love us as a community, and I'm going to call this the strongest, fitness health program community in Facebook. Let's just move forward together. Let's be, as Mike puts it, accountability is 100% across the board. Like we do that, it is so contagious. Look at the way COVID swept the world. It feels so like foreign now, doesn't it? I don't know about you guys, but talking about COVID seems like so yesterday. But look at the way that swept the world, right? I believe, my personal belief is that awareness and consciousness and emotional intelligence, more conversation like this is going to hit a tipping point. This is what I believe. It may not be true. It's going to hit a tipping point. And once it hits that tipping point, guess what? Almost like what do they call it? The R0 value or something with where it just spreads so quickly that it can no longer be contained like COVID did. That's what I feel can happen. If we create these mini communities where we are responsible, we don't sit in the guilt and shame. We say, fuck, that's just what happened. Now let's go. And then we move forward together and we power each other. When we say, we high five each other, we celebrate each other. Every single moment our community has been at its best has been when a person who has a small win feels confident to celebrate it, has a big win, feels confident to celebrate it. They get the support of the people around them. And we literally, like the energy in our whole entire life just changes. The moment we opt out of that, the energy drops because we're no longer taking responsibility. Guys, I'm going to leave it there. 25 people still watching live. I'm really glad that this has come off okay. Please just not in here, not in the comments, go to my Facebook wall and just put a takeaway, put any takeaway. I want to understand more so that I can do more of these podcasts, which are not filler content, which are properly beneficial and valuable podcasts. Guys, I appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you so much for coming into this morning. Let's do what we said. Let's kind of get a deload scenario happening this week. Let's not get too on the money. Let's save some juice. Let's keep a few reps in reserve, giving us the ability of 4 weeks come Monday. We call it Mince It May. Let's get stuck in, guys. I love you. Have a beautiful morning or afternoon or evening.